Alright, what's up guys? New deck profile today. We are doing an updated version of Traptrix. They just got a ton of new support in addition to a new engine that recently just came out in the all-new Lightning Overdrive set. Very exciting cards. Lots of stuff to sort of see and play. But let's get started. First of all, we played 3 copies of Traptrix Marmelio. Somehow, all of these years later, this is still the best Traptrix monster to open in your opening hand. Basically what it does on normal summon is search a trap hole card. That's already good because it's a +1 on summon, and it kind of feeds into the Sarah and all that other great stuff, so that effect is very good. And second effect is when this card is special summon mandatory, you have to destroy a spawn trap card on your opponent's side of the field. Now, the benefit of that is, even if your opponent doesn't have any, it's a mandatory effect. It has to activate. So even going first, this still triggers the effect of Sarah. That effect is extremely good. Still, somehow to this day, the best Traptrix monster, all these years later. Next, we played 3 copies of Traptrix Mantis. This card is extremely important, even more important than it used to be, because it searches the all-new card, Vesiculo. Basically, Vesiculo just special summons itself, but Mantis searches it, which is very good. It's like a new extender. It helps you go into the Link 2 if you want to. Helps you go into Sarah. Helps you do a lot of really important stuff in the deck. But basically, yeah, it's a +1. It searches a Traptrix monster, and then it has a second effect, a quick effect, where you can basically take one of your back row and then return it to your hand, and then you can set another back row, which can be important sometimes. You know, if your opponent like targets something, you can put it back into your hand and then set something else. But it's pretty cool. It's got its uses in the right situations. On top of that, it actually works pretty well with Sarah because, again, it's just another one of those Traptrix monster effects that you can activate in your main phase, or on turn 1, I should say. Next, like I said, we've got the Traptrix Vesiculo. This is an all-new card. It's a really good extender. Basically, it's a free special summon. We're only playing 2 copies rather than 3 copies because this card is Mantis is basically a free copy of this. You'd rather open Mantis than open one of these in your hand. Opening this is not like the end of the world. It's not bad by any means. It's still a very good card, but you'd rather Mantis into this card. Yeah, definitely, because it's basically, it just kind of, like I said, it kind of builds on that. Basically, this card can special summon itself, has 2 effects. Effect number 1, you can only use one of the 2 effects that I'm about to tell you in once that turn. Basically, what this card can do is you can send a set trap card to the graveyard to special summon this card. That is a very good effect because there aren't a great deal of special summons in the Traptrix deck on turn 1. So you have to utilize them as much as possible. So that effect is very good. It's kind of basically like helps you get into Link 2s. Then it has a second effect where if you control no spell and trap cards, no cards in your back row, basically, you can banish this from the graveyard and then set a whole trap to your back row, basically. So either way, both effects are really good. It has a recursion effect and it has like a kind of like a combo starting effect. Both effects are very good. Then we've got Traptrix Dianea. The reason we play one of this, even though I really like Dianea, she's probably my favorite of all of the Traptrix monsters. She is good in the grind game. She is absolutely atrocious in the opening hand. Like, you do not want to see her in your opening hand. She has an effect on turn 1 or on normal summon where you can special summon a Traptrix monster from your graveyard to your side of the field. That is a great effect. But it is not good on turn 1 because you won't have any Traptrix monsters in the graveyard on turn 1. It just doesn't happen. This deck is not like discarding a ton of cards. You never discard, so you do not have anything in your graveyard. So that effect is very good in the grind game, terrible in the opening game. On top of that, it has an effect where if it's special summon, you can target a whole trap card in your graveyard, put it in your back row. Also very good in the grind game. Yeah, both effects are good. It's just we don't need to play more than one because she is summonable off of Traptrix Sarah. So there's no point. She's not like a combo starter. You don't want to see her in your opening hand, but that doesn't change the fact she is a very good card. Next, we've got 2 copies of Parallel Exceed. I don't like playing 3 because this is a deck. Like I said, it's a grind game deck. You don't want to draw dead cards. You want to use this once and that's it. You don't want to use it more than once. So we played 2 copies of that. And now for the new engine, we are playing the Amazement engine. This is a very good engine that basically revolves around a bunch of trap cards that equip to your monsters or your opponent's monsters. And then based on whether they're equipped to your opponent's monsters or your monsters, you get different effects. And this card is like really good. It's like a plus. I want to say like a plus. It's like a +1 usually, and it's usually a +1. And if you get the popping effect off, then it's like a +2, +3, depending on what it does. But this card is very good. First of all, it's a free special summon. It special summons itself, and I'll get to how it special summons itself. But outside of that, this card is a pretty big monster. It's 2600 attack, and it special summons itself in a deck that is essentially a control deck. So it's very important that you kind of throw this guy out. He gets you some decent damage on board. But basically, the things that he does is, if you can banish Amazement trap cards from your graveyard, and then destroy that many cards on your opponent's side of the field. That effect is pretty good, because again, in the grind game, you can pop 2 cards, 3 cards. It really builds up pretty fast. Then it has another effect where if a trap card is activated, it's almost like an Altergeist Multi-Faker. You can kind of special summon it out to your side of the field, just because if a trap card is activated. Awesome effect. I love that effect because, like I said, it's just a free special summon. You're always going to be activating trap cards. Extremely good effect. And then it has the last effect where if this card's on the field and your opponent normal or special summons a monster, you can equip a Amazement spell or trap card to your opponent's monster. And like I said before, all of these trap cards have, basically they have effects, whether they're equipped to your opponent's cards or to your own. So either way, it's gonna be something positive. It gives you basically a ton of access to a lot of things. It gives you access to Book of Moon, your opponent's monster, or it gives you access to searching an Amazement card. Just a really, really good engine. It's a free special summon, so you really can't even get angry about it. Next, we play 1 copy of the Amazement Attendant, Comica. She is also a pretty decent card. I'm kind of on the fence about keeping her in the deck and not keeping her in the deck. But basically what she does is, when she's normal summoned, you can set an Amazement trap card from your deck to your spawn trap card zone. Basically, that can't even be Ash because it sets, it doesn't search. But on top of that, yeah, it just gives you access to that entire trap card engine. And then you can, of course, just send that card to the graveyard with the Vesiculo, and then special summon her, and then go into Sarah. So it's cool. It goes, you kind of get into that Traptrix engine in a sort of an alternative way, which is really good. And then on top of that, it has an effect, a quick effect, where you can switch the thing that your Amazement trap cards are equipped to. So if it's equipped to your monster, you could switch it to your opponent's monster, or you could switch it to another one of your monsters. It's basically a quick effect that gets you to, change what effect you're going to be able to use. So yeah, she's pretty cool. Then we play 3 copies of Ash Blossom, best hand trap in the game. It hits a lot of different decks very, very easily. There's not a single deck where you won't find a use for Ash Blossom. Every deck, there's at least one card that you can Ash, and that's why it's kind of the best hand trap overall. We play Pot of Prosperity, 3 copies. We don't really draw in this deck at all, so Prosperity is a perfectly reasonable card to use because, like I said, this deck has no draw power, so you might as well Prosperity, dig 6 cards deep into your deck. Very good. Play Amazing Time Ticket. This is the search spell for the Amazing deck, or the Amazement deck. Basically what this does is, if you activate it, it's a quick play. If you activate it during your turn, it's the same cost, 800 life points. If you activate it during your turn, you can search for an Amazement card, and if you activate it during your opponent's turn, you can set an Amazement card into your spawn trap card zone directly. So you set a Amazement trap card. Typically you want to activate it during your turn. The only reason you would activate one during your opponent's turn is it's a quick play, so you might draw 2 copies. It's hard once per turn. You activate one, set the other one, so you end up using the other effect later. But generally speaking, you'll be just searching. Then one more spell card, which is the Double or Nothing. We of course do play the Utopia double package because, like I said, the one kind of issue with this deck is the power output is very low. Most of your monsters are very, very weak. So it's really nice to go into the Utopia double package and kind of OTK out of nowhere. Although at this point, I think most people kind of know that this deck can make Utopia double since all of its main deck monsters are level 4. But that is the end of the spell cards. Next, let's get into the trap cards, the heart and soul of the deck. We play 2 copies of Floodgate Trap Hole. This is the best Trap Hole card, and this is the speed duel version. Basically what this does is, when your opponent summons a monster or monsters, meaning if they like pendulum summon. If your opponent pendulum summons and you activate this, it's over. I mean, there's nothing they can do. Basically, what this card does is if your opponent summons, you can just book that monster, and then monster is permanently booked. Like, they have to actually go through. They actually have to use a card in order to change that battle position. But typically, they cannot change their battle position. So that is really, really good because, as you guys probably know, you can't link with face down monsters. You can't XYZ with face down monsters. You can't synchro with face down monsters. Those monsters are just stuck. And that effect doesn't target, so right off the bat, like, you can even catch monsters that are like, they can't be targeted, they can't be destroyed. You can just catch them with this card, which is really, really, really good. Yeah, incredibly one of the better trap cards you can play. Trap hole cards that you can play. Next, we play 2 copies of Gravedigger's Trap Hole. Basically, what this card does is if your opponent activates a monster effect in their hand or in the graveyard, or basically a monster, or in the banish pile, basically if it like banishes itself for cost. If you use any of those 3, you can negate the effect, and then you can inflict 2,000 damage to your opponent, which is really good because, again, you can kind of like win in time in that way. A lot of people pay 2,000 life points for Verde Anaconda, so they're already at 6,000, and you activate this, now they're at 4,000. You summon a Utopia double, and you just wipe them out. Like, it's really good. It can help reduce the amount of damage that you'll have to do. But these are really the only the trap hole cards that we play. We play them with 2 because we want to be able to trap trick into them just in case. But both very, very good. We play 2 copies of Traptrix. Unfortunately, it's not one word, so it's not searchable in any way. It actually has nothing to do with the archetype, but outside of the artwork, it has absolutely nothing to do with the archetype. It's not searchable. It's just like a regular trap card. You either open it or you don't. Next week, for the Amazement cards, we play 2 Amazement trap cards. We play Amazement Attraction, Psycho Coaster. Basically, the Amazement cards, you can activate them and then equip them to your opponent's monster or to one of your own. And based on whether it's equipped to your own or your opponent's, you get different effects. So this particular card, if it's equipped to your monster, you can send this card to the graveyard and one of your opponent's spawn trap cards. You can send basically both of them to the graveyard. Pretty good. Kind of like double wipes it out. It's kind of like a searchable MST. And then if this card is equipped to one of your if this card is equipped to one of your opponent's monsters, you can search an Amazement card and then send this to the graveyard. So either way, you basically always have 2 different uses, which is pretty cool with these cards. Next, we've got the Amazement Attraction Horror House. This card's another really cool one. Basically, if this card is equipped to one of your monsters, you can target one effect monster your opponent controls and then negate its effect, so it's kind of like impermanence. And then its other effect is if it's equipped to one of your opponent's monsters, you can basically book that monster face down. So again, it's searchable Book of Moon, or it's a searchable impermanence. And then the other effect is basically like a searchable Reinforcements of the Army, or it's a searchable MST. So you have like access to this giant toolbox of GOAT format cards basically for free. It's really awesome. You can either set them directly off that card, you can set them directly off of the Amazement Attendant, or you can attach them to your opponent's monsters with the Administrator. Like, it's crazy. You have basically all of GOAT format at your, like, access to all of GOAT format's best spawn trap cards just like that. It's really, really good. Next, we've got Ice Dragon's Prison. We play 2 copies of that. This is to out Dragoon. He's one of the most annoying cards to deal with, and this is a trap-based way to get rid of him, because you actually don't want to use stuff like Super Poly. You don't want to clog your extra deck with needless cards if you can avoid it. So play the Ice Dragon's Prison, and it's not only good against Dragoon, like it's good against actually a lot of decks. Like anything that can't be targeted, that needs to be destroyed with some alternative measure, that card's pretty good. But definitely Dragoon is definitely the main card you want to get rid of. 2 copies of Compulsory Evacuation Device, really good, because sometimes your opponent just sinks multiple resources into a Link monster, and you can just bounce that Link monster. Like, this card is really good against Verde Anaconda, because Verde Anaconda is not a card that activates on summon. It's a manual, like it's It's a I forget what the right expression for it, but basically it's an ignition effect. Your opponent has to activate it. Like they have to summon it, and then they have to wait for a response, and then they have to activate it. You just on summon, bounces back to their hand, and just sink resources into a monster they can't even use. But basically, this card is very, very good for that. In addition to that, you can actually bounce your own monsters, and I like that because you can do things like bounce your own, like monsters that you summon off of Sarah. Like you can bounce, not that, I'm sorry. You can bounce a Dionea, and then you can normal summon it, and then special summon a Traptrix monster out of your graveyard. So basically, you can bounce your or your opponent's monster. It can come in handy in either situation. If your opponent has like a board wipe, you can bounce your own monster, save it for the following turn. There's a lot of cool stuff that you can do with Compulsory Evacuation Device if you know what you're doing. And then we play 3 copies of the Phantom Knights Shade Brigadine. This card and a Traptrix monster is like a god opening. That's what you want to open with, because this is actually a trap card that you can activate on turn 1, and you can XYZ summon. There's nothing preventing you from doing so. But that is the main deck. Let's get into the extra deck, the real heart and soul of the deck. First of all, we start off with 3 copies, and this is non-negotiable. 3 copies of Traptrix Sarah. She is the deck. Like without her, this deck is literally unplayable. You have to play her. You have to play 3 of her. You will go into multiple copies of her over the course of a game. Yeah, very, very good card. Basically, what she does is, if you activate first of all, she's unaffected by traps, which is nice because she can't get impermanence. Basically, if you link summon her, she's unaffected by normal traps. That's phenomenal. Like I said, no, your opponent cannot impermanence her. But basically her effects are, if you activate a normal trap, you can special summon a Traptrix monster from your deck. And then these effects are, basically you can use each of these effects once per turn. Then its second effect is if a Traptrix monster other than Sarah activates its effect, you can set a trap hole card from your deck directly to your side of the field. Also an awesome card effect, because you can basically activate this effect, special summon Murmelio. Murmelio automatically has to activate to destroy your opponent's spawn trap cards, even if they don't have any. And since that was activated, you can set like a trap hole. So it's like a +2 every single turn that it's on the field. It's like such a good card. It's just every single turn, +2, +2, +2. This is the card that will help you win sort of like a resource war with your opponent. It's extremely important. Next is the all-new Traptrix Cularia. Basically, this is a Link 2. Also, this is a very good card. Used to kind of go into 2 copies of Sarah, which was pointless because Sarah... There's no point to ever go into 2 copies of Sarah because she literally is a hard once per turn, so it doesn't matter. So now you have other options. You can go into a Sarah and a Cularia. Both, again, very, very good. Either one is a really good option. Basically, what this card does is if you activate your trap hole cards, instead of sending them to grave, you can just set them back face down and use them later. Again, disgusting in the grind game. Really good. Then it has another effect where during the end phase, you can basically just special summon a Traptrix monster from your graveyard. And that is for free. Like, that's just a really, really good effect for free during the end phase. Super good, no complaints, and it's, yeah, during your end phase. Very, very good. Just directly into the end phase, and that's another effect that triggers the Traptrix Sarah. Very, very good. We play 1 copy of Link Spider. Sometimes stuff gets really weird. I like having access to it just in case. There's been a lot of weird stuff going on at local, so 1 copy of that. 1 Boral Sword Dragon. We play, just for OTKing, 2 copies of Traptrix Rafflesia. This card is extremely important. It gives you protection from targeting, destruction by battle. It gives you protection to all of your Traptrix monsters. In addition to that, you can, basically it lets you use one of your trap hole cards from your deck and just apply it as if it's this card's effect. Yeah, also a pretty darn good effect. I like it a lot. It gives the deck more protection on top of the fact that it has all of this massive recursion. 1 copy of Traptrix Alomaris. This is another card. This deck, it's incredible how much support this deck actually has gotten recently, like in the last, when this came out in Ecto. So what was that with Eternity Code, and then it got more support in this set. Like this set, it's crazy how much support this archetype gets, whereas there's so many archetypes that like Konami is almost forgotten about, but this archetype just keeps getting support. But this is another good one. Basically what this does is you can detach 2 materials from this and then special summon an insect or plant from your graveyard. That effect is fairly good. Or it has another effect where you can attach one material from this card, and if you destroy one of your opponent's cards, one of your opponent's monsters, you can special summon it by detaching one material. So it's pretty good. So it's like if you, like, for example, were to like bottomless one of your opponent's cards, or that other trap hole card, the Gravedigger trap hole, you can destroy a monster, like for example in their hand, it goes to grave, and then you can just activate this and summon it to your side of the field. Also very usable. Basically, I more so use the first effect than the second effect, but it comes up with a second effect. Does stuff. We play one copy of Utopia because obviously we're going to be going into the next card, which is the Utopia double, and then we also play the Zeus. We play a ton of XYZs. It definitely comes up. One copy of Time Thief Redoer. Again, it's just kind of like a good rank 4. And one copy of Abyss Dweller on turn 1, because if your opponent has a graveyard deck, you want to have that kind of, you want to stop them on that first turn, and then kind of just start getting your trap cards going to the point where they can never, ever come back. But that is basically it. That is the entire Traptrix deck. It's a very, very fun deck. It's gotten significantly better because it's got new extenders, new link monsters to play with, and by the looks of things, 3 to 4 months from now, it'll probably have new support. But that is basically the deck profile. Thank you for watching, and have a terrific day, guys.